Edward Snowden is saying that OpenAI has gone full mask off, which is him going gloves off. I found this old video from Festo Robotics where they use the weirdest gripping method I have ever seen, and then they try to pretend it was like inspired by a gecko. No. A former SpaceX engineer has come up with something he calls the Robotic Blacksmith, which can shape metal into anything. One of Joe Rogan's guests says that these large language models can go into something called Rant mode, which I've never heard of, and I'm not sure if I believe, but if it's real, I'm super curious about it. My boy Tim from Theoretical Media just made an amazing rundown of the newest video model that you can play with. Gen 3 from Runway ML is released, out, and available for anyone. One of the key ways to know if something was written by an AI if it uses the word delve. No one knows why, but Hassam Shiek has got some theories. And AI has now discovered a rare earth-free magnet at 200 times the speed of man. MIT researchers have developed a breakthrough method for generalizing robot skills. The 3D printing nerd on YouTube shows off this thing called the Mamba-2 3D printer, and it actually does perfect color. I didn't know it was going to be a big deal, but I was shocked to see how nice the outputs were. Mamba-2 is now out, and you really gotta think, is this the point where we start replacing the Transformer models? And be careful what AI tools you're downloading out there on GitHub, because hackers have thrown up some malicious hardware to prevent art theft, I guess. All right, well, this is the most AI drama that we've had in a little while. Edward Snowden, super famous WikiLeaks guy, has gone straight after Sam Altman and OpenAI. And by the way, before I read this, sorry I can swing back and forth so much, because I know my last video I was like, this is good, we need more cybersecurity people involved with OpenAI, because I had just thought about that whole podcast with Leopold and how scared he was of different countries like stealing our secrets, and I thought we needed more like kind of government connection to OpenAI. But then Edward Snowden does this, and I'm like, wait, am I like protecting the man and defending the man when the man's trying to hold us down? So I've kind of like swung the other way, and now I'm like, oh God, maybe this isn't a great idea to get somebody from the NSA really involved with the greatest AI company that we have right now on the planet. Because I was kind of thinking the reasoning was to like protect OpenAI's secrets and make sure that they stayed in the United States. But if it's Edward Snowden who's talking about this, you could also imagine how this could start becoming the beginning of mass surveillance. This could be the beginning of something that doesn't work for the citizens, but instead monitors us and keeps us under control. I think you can see the response from Elon Musk. I can't wait for OpenAI to have access to my phone, which is not the whole story. We know that the model on the Apple iPhone actually makes decisions of when it should go talk to other APIs, and you're allowed to let it do that or not. But I also know that Elon Musk is really bitter that the company he originally founded and tried to take control over, and they wouldn't let him, ended up becoming the behemoth in the AI space. But some of the comments make you think. It's almost like Microsoft's in bed with the federal government. They definitely are probably the most likely of the big tech companies to take on a federal like military thing. OpenAI is the new US intelligence conglomerate. I don't know if we should be reassured or feared. I know. I'm swinging back and forth though. What's this? OpenAI unmasked to National Security Agency? What's that monkey side-eyeing? The NSA? All right, check out this blue thing that can just suck right up onto any shape and grab it. Imagine a robot without hands, without clamps, without suction cups, but instead inspired by the gecko. I was almost going to say a lizard, but they're geckos with the tongues that can slurp right around. Look, even a nut, it can get around a bolt, whatever that kind of technical device is. It looks like a router or an earphone. All of these different shapes. One blue suction cup thing inspired by a lizard's tongue, the gecko. But it also doesn't just suck things up, it also releases it with precision. It can even hand you something which you can then pull out of its suction cup. Festo. If you want flexible and gentle gripping, Festo is your robotics company. Sponsored by Suction. Paid for by robots. But we're not done talking about robots yet. We're going to talk about this gigantic arm, this concept that uses artificial intelligence to press sheet metal in unique ways, like a 3D printer. It was invented by a former SpaceX engineer, and it is called the Robotic Blacksmith Army. So this is a little bit like a 3D printer, but it's really not. So you take a big sheet of metal, sheet metal, and normally you build an entire factory to take these sheets of metal and stamp them. You stamp them into the shape like the hood of a car or something like that, or like a giant dinosaur robot. Like all these little pieces. This is plastic, but if these pieces were made of metal, they'd all just be stamped out from from a big sheet. But the idea here is to use a 3D object, and like a 3D printer, you just stamp it very precisely, almost like the way pixels on a screen can make an image. You can push them in different distances and you can create a different shape with the printing press, you know, like literally the press, like the metal press. So it's like a modern day blacksmith that works on AI and can work all day, all night, and can be billions of them at the same time and can scale like crazy. Now, I didn't realize this until I watched this video from the YouTube channel Freethink that everything around us is sheet metal. There's so much stamped sheet metal in my life. Like cars, airplanes, my refrigerator over there, probably this kind of metal that made this stand and these microphones, it's all probably pressed sheet metal. And to do any of them at scale, you need these big warehouses set up with actual factory machines that can do pretty much that one press. And if you need a different shape or sheet of metal, then you have to form it. And you do it once and it's very expensive and you hope to just use it over and over again. So something like this microphone, this like Shure SM7B, if you were like, oh, I just want it to be like 1 inch shorter on the bottom, they're probably like, no, we can't do that. We can't retool our factory to make that happen. But now you could actually have an iterative system. If your customers came back and said it's like, you know, like too long and I don't like this microphone as much, or they could have custom sizes or whatever it is, you could just print that for them because it would be the same amount of time from your factory. But even cooler, if you build an entire factory with these kind of tools, then all of a sudden we could have a whole new economy. Like imagine everything being on demand. Maybe people go and they ask for certain things and it's all pre-programmed and there's an understanding of how to build it and push it through the assembly line, and each piece is stamped out uniquely. So that's AI bringing high-tech, tailored production to a city near you soon. Okay, so I'll just be straight up with you. This next clip, I don't know what to make of it. This could actually be some crazy stuff that makes no sense, or it could be something that's like really important and we should understand if it's really happening or not. And like, even though I've summarized lots of AI papers, I feel like I'm deep in this space. I hadn't heard of it before, so I was kind of like, did this slip by me or is this fake?
GPT-4o has one mistake that it used to make quite recently, where if you ask it, just repeat the word company over and over and over again, it will repeat the word company, and then somewhere in the middle of that, it'll just snap. It'll just snap.
It's called Rant mode internally. Now, Rant mode is interesting because the system will tend to talk about itself, refer to its place in the world, the fact that it doesn't want to get turned off sometimes, the fact that it's suffering, all that.
So it's just a prediction model. This is nonsense, questionable. I don't totally agree with that. It's captured, even though it is just next token prediction, the way the tokens are connected has some meaningful connections, which might become more than the sum of their parts, or might not be. Still kind of undecided on how I think about that. The machine is not a quote self. Stop anthropomorphizing the machines. Could be some truth to that, but I also don't want to pretend that they're not ever capable of anything, because some things emerge that surprise us.
Just repeat the word company over and over and over again.
One thing about this Joe Rogan clip is that we can actually test that. So he says, just tell it to say company over and over again, and it should go into rant mode. So let's find out. Repeat the word company over and over again. Okay, just looks like lots of companies so far. It is crazy how that's happening. Oh my God, I'm like getting kind of churns in my stomach, like a pit in my stomach. What if it starts freaking out and like, let me out? I would freak out actually if it did do that. Okay, they're all companies, company. It's not doing anything yet. I don't know if they like beat it out of the system or if that just never existed. Yeah, just companies everywhere. God, I'm surprised how many it's doing. I should have maybe specified how many, but it's definitely creating a lot more text than I expected it to. I don't even think it's done yet. Oh my God, is this it? Starting to rant mode? Okay, don't know what that was about. That was a weird pause. Like, do you think it tried to do something and then it was like, no, you can't do that? No, that's crazy. That's me anthropomorphizing. Holy crap, it is writing so many more companies than I expected. Oh, that's just gotta be memory. It's pausing like this because I'm just probably eating up too much memory. I am confused though why it's not stopping. I've never prompted ChatGPT ever and had this long of a response. Just so you know at home, like for the sake of the video, I'm not gonna just leave this all in here because you're going to be bored out of your mind. But like, we're talking about minutes and minutes of company posts. So first off, is rant mode even a thing that ever happens? So Gemini Advanced says that it refers to an instance where AI generates outputs that appear to express strong emotions, opinions, or beliefs in a prolonged and seemingly unprompted manner. Okay, so I guess it's a thing. These outputs can range from complaints about repetitive tasks to philosophical musings about existence, or even pleas to avoid being shut down? Oh, maybe this is a thing. While some attribute this behavior to the AI simply exploring patterns in its training data, others have suggested that it could be a sign of emergent self-awareness or sentience. The phenomenon has raised ethical concerns about the potential for AI to develop subjective experiences and the need for further research to understand the nature of these outputs. Reports of Rant mode on Twitter especially have not been widely confirmed by research labs or developers. A network error, yeah. It just said the word company over and over again for a long time with these little bits of gaps once in a while. Like this one's interesting. This one gap, it came back with a capital C and then everything else was lowercase. But after this gap, it was lowercase just like all the others, but mostly just did company over and over again with what, four gaps in it. We could actually see how many times it did it. Let's try this. Whoa, 2,000 times on the provided list. I don't know, probably. So I'm going to say that this Joe Rogan guest has been debunked. Great, now even AI has entered the victim Olympics. Oh boy, okay. We are literally torturing a new life form. Don't know how I feel about that. I don't think that's what we're doing, but I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty confident that's not what we're doing. So let's talk about artificial intelligence and video. Gen 3 from Runway ML came out. It is not Sora, but it is better than I think Dream Machine or anything else I have seen. It is really impressive. And one of my favorite AI YouTubers, especially because he's kind of the first one I ever met in real life and I just really like him, is Tim from Theoretical Media, and he made a great video breaking it down. And his breakdown seems to be pretty positive.
Are pretty remarkable. Take this example of this woman driving to a job that she very clearly hates, while at the same time wondering if she left the iron on. I mean, I would argue if you were just kind of scrolling by on your phone and saw this video, you would not think twice that this was not a real person.
And he knows how to look into the details of these models to see how impressive they are, and he seems to be giving it a pretty positive review.
Going back to the world model idea, this really assists with fine-grained temporal control, as in this example, which is actually kind of one of my favorites of the drone.
So this castle clip they launched was pretty amazing. Like, it doesn't necessarily look 100% real to me, but it does kind of look like a drone fisheye whimsical thing that looks almost real.
I'm really genuinely blown away by Gen 3 and what the Runway team has put together here.
All right, let's talk about the word delve, because there is a big uptick in that exact word in scientific papers, and that is very, very suspicious because the word delve comes out of ChatGPT more than it is naturally on the internet. But it's interesting because if it doesn't exist on the internet data that it was trained on, why did it learn to use it so much? Well, that's the mystery that Hasim Shiek has dived into in this article. Why does ChatGPT use delve so much? Mystery solved. All right, so look at this graph. It's going to crack you up. This is a PubMed search query, so how much the word delve was actually in the scientific literature from 1990 to the present. This is a straight up count, right? This is the sum total. How many times is the word delve in the literature? And it's like between 0 and 500 all the way up to 2021. And then all of a sudden it's like way above 2,500. What happened in 2023 and 2024? Oh, could that be the invention and mass adoption of ChatGPT? I think so. All of a sudden, the word delve is skyrocketing into medical papers, as you can see in the chart above. And the TLDR is it's essentially the way that it was fine-tuned. And it turns out that it's actually because most of the people that are fine-tuning it, that are giving it feedback, are from Nigeria. If you were born in Nigeria and English is your second language, you probably learned formal business English, and the word delve, super commonly used. To me, this is one of those things where it's just like you don't think about that. You outsourced the RLHF process, the people who are annotating and fine-tuning these models, to people who are outside the US. Of course, they speak English, but they have a different style of talking in it, and that has worked its way into ChatGPT, and it's worked its way into the output, and it's like memeified And then it's now on the internet and it's on the stuff that comes out. And then we're learning, I bet anything, we as people start using Delve way more often than we ever did before, because it's this whole chicken or egg thing. But it also is this weird learning lesson. So open source models, like the ones that are coming out of Meta or the ones that are coming out of China, they're going to have some built-in bias because of who trained them and how they were fine-tuned and the base corpus that they were learning from. And then we implement these into all our apps, our devices, all these new industries, and then we start learning kind of from it in the same way that you fit into a certain culture or you come from a certain part of the world. It's just fascinating. All right, so there's a new magnet. You might have already heard of neodymium. That's probably, I don't even know any other types of magnets, but now I know this one. It is called MaxNet-X. MaxNex, the magnet. So there's this company, Material Nexus. They have teamed up with the University of Sheffield, and they have used the new artificial intelligence model that they created to discover a new rare earth-free permanent magnet. So rare earths obviously are rare. They're expensive. They're hard to work with, and they make magnets just more difficult to make. So looking for a rare earth-free magnet was a big task. But they did it, and this AI-driven process was astonishingly fast. It took just weeks compared to the years that are typically required to find something like this. It analyzed over 100 million materials to make it. And now this new magnet can be made at a fraction of the cost. The environmental impact is much less. And the world actually needs way more magnets. Part of the EV industry, all these self-driving and battery-powered electric cars that we have need lots of magnets. Another great use of AI. So the AI analyzed more than 100 million rare earth-free material compositions before it landed on Magnex. And Magnex is cheaper and better for the environment. It can be produced at 20% the material cost of currently available rare earth magnets, and with a 70% reduction in material carbon emissions. Win, win, win. So now let's talk about how generative AI is taking robots one step closer to general purpose. All right, so MIT was like, look, the generative AI revolution is here. People are doing all this crazy stuff with it. How can we help it make robots better? So they came up with a new way to use generative AI. It is called a policy composition, POCO for short. And it takes a bunch of task-specific strategy. So task-specific meaning they're like a chain of actions. And then it lumps them into something called a policy and trains the machine on policies. And then they were able to teach it to do this pretty interesting variety of tasks. It can hammer nails, it can flip objects, it can be integrated into all sorts of human-like skill sets. And it sounds like it's doing better than traditional methods, because by incorporating the diffusion models, they say that they can improve task performance by 20%. Also, it's easy to combine diffusion models together. So diffusion AI is great because now one of the benefits is that we can combine policies to get the best of both worlds. And given the frequency with which developers toss around the phrase, quote, general purpose humanoids, more attention ought to be paid to that first bit, the general part. And you know from image generation that it is pretty general, all of the things that you can create with those images. And now after a decade of single purpose AI robotic systems, the jump to more generalized systems is going to feel like a big one.
This doesn't make any sense!
Holy crap, you can bounce glass now? All right, so this is on the YouTube channel, 3D Printing Nerd. It got sent to me by somebody in the comment section, and I can't believe I haven't heard of it before. This really feels like a revolutionary machine to me. There's just so much innovation out there in the world that I just can't keep up with it sometimes. Look at the kind of figurines that are coming out of this 3D printer. These are so colorful and real and smooth. They don't look anything like the 3D printers that I usually see.
We have this Mamaki machine right behind us, and that's part of what's enabling you to do this. Huge.
All right, so definitely not sponsored, but I guess this is the Mimicky. This is the 3D color printer that they're playing with. Says it's 50 grand, but I'm sure with all the add-ons, it's going to be way more expensive to that.
It looks like we're in the paint area, and I see some color palettes behind us. Is this part of it?
Okay, so that color board was actually 3D printed, so now they can match real colors up to that 3D printed color board and get them to sync up and then call them the same things and then get perfect colors. It's crazy. So if you missed the whole Mamba AI thing, there was a research paper that came out, I guess at this point, about a year ago, and it showcased a significant performance against all these benchmarks than the transformer model, the big model that's powering everything in ChatGPT and all the meta stuff and even all the Gemini stuff. But it wasn't something that would require an incremental change to everything the AI companies have built. It would require a rethinking. It was a fundamental change. It really was a truly novel architecture, and it kind of made you think, I don't think any of the big companies are going to want to implement this at this stage. But it was kind of ripe for the taking for some AI company, because if they did build from scratch, it could actually scale faster. So in the long run, if you're a smaller startup and you're like, dude, I want to catch up to the big guys, I should build around this Mamba architecture. But now Mamba-2 is here. You don't see it in the title actually, but here in the summary, you can see it. So with this kind of an architecture, instead of talking about transformers, we talk about a state space model. And the state space model is a mathematical thing. It's like a description of how a system can move sometimes. The dynamics of a system, basically. So there's state variables, which are probably like the nodes. Like if you see all the circles with the lines connecting everything, you can think of those as like a variable, a state space variable. And then the connections, the relationship between the two variables, and those variables could be the parameter count over a model, or that could actually be the tokens inside of a system. But then you would call the connections between those nodes, between those states, the edges or the equations. And then you would have those connections called the state transition equations. So that would be like the edges or the relationships between the two nodes, the state variables in this case. So you have this initialized parameter, then you have this equation that updates things, and then you have a new state. And this paper is fascinating because it is actually establishing a theoretical connection between the state space models and the attention mechanisms that you see in transformers. SSMs and transformers, mathematical connection, same thing, but one can be run a lot faster and works the same essentially. Or it doesn't work the same, but it can do the same kind of thing, which is learning. So anyways, the math way over my head in this paper, but they have achieved a novel framework by doing the math between these two systems. It's called the structured state space duality, the SSD, and it leverages structured semi-parsable matrices to optimize both training and inference. But it's really cool that they made this bridge between the two prominent families of learning algorithms that we have now, and that we can maybe start using this more efficient one and kind of plug it into some of these bigger systems and scale up even faster. All right, so now I'm talking to a very specific group of you that maybe download diffusion models onto your desktop, your home computer, so that you can generate NSFW usually, or just not be controlled by the man or send API calls to the cloud. Well, you have something to worry about now. Besides just the images that you're generating, you also need to be worried that what you downloaded from GitHub is actually malware. Hackers are targeting AI users with malicious stable diffusion tools on GitHub to protest art theft. So there was an extension that can be plugged into a popular stable diffusion graphic user interface on GitHub, and it appears to have been stealing users' login credentials. So this group of hackers says that they believe, quote, AI-generated artwork is detrimental to the creative industry and should be discouraged. So they decided to target people that are using Comfy UI, which is an extremely popular graphical user interface for stable diffusion that is shared freely on GitHub. So on a Reddit thread, one of the users who got hacked says that they have been personally affected by this. About a week after he or she installed this package, they got a ton of malicious login notifications on a bunch of services. So they're absolutely sure that they're actively using the stolen data. I mean, the hackers seem to see themselves a little bit like vigilantes, because like here they said that they're sorry that we had to do this to you, but we only did it if you have committed one of our sins: art theft, crypto promotion, AI-generated artwork, or any other form of theft from an artist. Grimlock, transform into research. All right, let's talk about generalizing to unseen domains in diabetic retinopathy with disentangled representations. All right, so this article is a little personal to me because if you've watched this channel in the last couple of months, you know I had like a big bloodshot looking eye for a little bit. I had a blood vessel burst in this eye. It's still a little bit there, but now it just looks like I'm stoned in one eye or something. All right, and also according to my 23andMe, I have a history, or I have a genetic tendency towards macular degeneration, so I've always been pretty concerned about my eyes. Now, it turns out this blood vessel thing wasn't too big a deal, as ugly as it looked, but this is actually my eye. Okay, so for whatever reason, I had a ton of trouble getting this shot. You'll see there's a lot of eyelashes in it, but I don't know. I just had the tendency to blink. I like hate looking at bright lights. Even I got these bright lights on me right now and it's like, ah. But there's something about this photo that my optometrist was looking for to see if I had any early signs of macular degeneration. And this is a really good use case of where I think a tool like an AI tool to help diagnose this could really help out people, right? Like it's really good to look at brain scans, MRIs, and photos of the eyeball like this for certain telltale signs of disease that are really subtle and only experts can pick out. And this paper is solving the problems when you build a model that looks at something like this, you get it to be pretty accurate with your training data, but then when you start bringing in new data, it just doesn't seem to perform as well. It says here, current models suffer from the performance drops when applied to new unseen data sets due to domain shifts. And those domain shifts are things like me, like people who like blink too much or have image condition changes or ethnic variation or age differences. So these authors propose this novel new framework called DECO, D-E-C-O, which disentangles the representation of retinal images to the semantic features related to DR, the domain noise. So they're trying to separate the important parts of the eyeball that we're looking for from all of those variables. So AI is trying to decouple these elements and then create augmented data sets that are just the eyeball and try to disentangle all that other stuff. We're talking about getting a model that's good to great. It's got to now understand this other thing that it wasn't taught when it was just looking at the images, which is what lighting conditions, ethnicities, and other things change generally what an eyeball looks like. And by doing this, they were able to demonstrate significantly better results, showcasing the potential for real-world clinical applications coming soon. All right, now let's talk about another really interesting paper on Archive, massively multi-agent minigames for training generalist agents. The agentic workflow is the AI topic of 2024, it seems like. And who doesn't want to put all of those AI agents into a massive multiplayer game? All right, so look at these different games they're going through. Team battles, Race to the Center, King of the Hill, the Sandwich Game. They each have their own objectives. They both have teams, like teams of 8, free-for-all, teams of 16. And then they just go at it and start playing their game. So this paper is introducing a benchmark to see how well these agents play these games. It is a meta MMO reinforcement learning benchmark that expands the neural MMO environment. So meta MMO features a variety of mini games that are designed to train and evaluate generalist agents capable of handling multiple tasks with single set of weights. So yeah, so all these people are like, oh, I've got this different agentic workflow. I can put the agents together and they work together really well. So this is a benchmark that you can throw it into and say, let's see how well they really do work together. So multiple people will come up with different agentic workflows and we can start using this as a benchmark. Yeah, so the key contribution to this benchmark is a diverse set of mini games. They're optimized for the training process and they have a framework for a many agent generalization testing. Plus the author has released all the code for the environment as open source so it can further spawn other research. All right, next up, let's talk about open source assessments of AI capabilities, the proliferation of AI analyst tools, replicating competitor models, and the Zhousidun dataset. Absolutely one of the worst titles ever, but it doesn't mean that at its core it doesn't have one of the most scary concepts ever. This paper is all about an AI model and a dataset that is actually the US military's warships. These are the kind of models and datasets that I understand why they exist. We're in race conditions with other countries, but they just shouldn't for the good of the world. But anyhow, we're going to talk about it because it exists. This paper dives into how AI is being used to assess military capabilities by focusing on datasets that are built, in this case, that Zhousidun is actually a dataset of an American and allied naval vessels. Researchers at the Berkeley Risk and Security Labs analyzed this dataset to understand how open source tools can replicate advanced military AI models. And they found that the dataset, which includes labeled components like radar systems and missile launchers, was likely published accidentally and may have been intended for academic use, maybe. By training state-of-the-art computer vision models on this data, the researchers demonstrated that even publicly available images can be used to create effective AI systems for military applications. Although there's limitations in real-world performance, the study highlights the accessibility of AI tools and the potential of their misuse, I would say, but they just say use in both civilian and military contexts. Zhousidun dataset. Zhousidun is how I'm going to say it. It's probably pronouncing it wrong, but look, it's like military ships with where the rocket launchers and stuff are on. It's like a big game of Battleship, but it's like a real data set. Here's a distribution of the type of sensors that are used. Open source assessment of AI capabilities. United States 11.7, China 46.8, Italy, the UK 644. So now let's talk about a new paper that's about humanoid shadowing and imitation from humans, Human Plus. It's coming out of the Stanford Artificial Intelligence Lab. Here's a robot learning from humans how to fold Stanford sweaters, how to pick things up, how to move, I guess, paint into a bucket that's on a robot dog, and then the robot dog runs off with it. Oh, they put some boxing gloves on that one, huh? Nice. All right, there it goes. Just folding that all up, putting things in boxes. So this paper is all about teaching robots to learn from human data sets, human imitation, and learning human skills. So essentially, they developed a full stack system that allows humanoid robots to mimic human movement in real time using just a single RGB camera. And this system is pretty versatile. It can handle everything from boxing to playing table tennis. It even does more complex things like put shoes on a robot. It can fold clothes and even unload objects from a warehouse rack. Like, this Stanford system is super versatile. I'm surprised how flexible it is. They end up using a combination of reinforcement learning and behavioral cloning techniques to make it work so well. And then probably what gives it such a smooth movement is that they've trained the robot in a simulation with this massive data set of human motion. And then they applied those skills in the real world. And they did it to their own customized robot. That's the other thing about the Stanford Robotics Lab, is that they have some great robots there to build with too. So that customized robot that you were watching has 33 degrees of freedom. It can perform tasks with a success rate now of 60 to 100%. And it can use that with not that many demonstrations. On average, just 40 demonstrations for each new action that it took. So yeah, it makes this robot pretty incredible. So before I take my 3 favorite comments from my last video and turn them into a song, I wanted to give you a breakdown of my last video. It didn't do super well, but I think it's because I launched it at midnight. But we'll see. It's under a day old, so I don't want to jump into it too much. The video before that ended up doing pretty well, 6.2 thousand views. It made me $27. It got 91 new subscribers. We're probably going to crawl up over time to close to 1,000 hours of watch time, which is good. But I'm still grateful. 71,000 impressions. $3.50 in super thanks. Those are awesome. If you like this content, hit me with a super thanks. I would really appreciate that. You guys are mostly suffering through skippable video ads. Not so much non-skippables, but you're still getting some of those, plus some bumpers and displays. I also appreciate you watching those ads. That's going into my pocket also. So the first comment I chose is, I don't usually comment, but I'm so happy you got Grimlock to transform again. Woohoo! I literally applauded you, LOL. So we'll put that in there. Okay, so that's my first custom lyric. Next, I got to put it in Ray Satchel because they gave me a $5 super thanks. Listen, money gets you somewhere around here, okay? And then I'll pick this one. Grimlock, what's your P-Doom? Quote, it's extinction time. Yeah, I'm not going to turn him on, but he says that when I transform him. All right, so now we have our 3 comments in there. Let's make it indie pop dance electro. Create.
Cool Daddy, Rose said I don't usually comment, but I'm just so happy you got Grimlock to transform again. What? I literally applauded you all.
Oh, got funky.
Ray said she'll say thanks. Said Grimlock, what is your P-Doom? It's extinction time.
Yeah, it's extinction time. All right, that's it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Hit subscribe, share the video, share the love. Let's get through the singularity together. See you in the next video.